The grocery store buzzed with tired chatter. Emily Carter, 19, stood in line clutching ramen, milk, and cheap bread. A community college freshman working double shifts at a diner, she barely scraped by. In front of her stood an old man, tall but stooped, leather jacket weathered by decades. His beard was gray, his eyes clouded but sharp. When the cashier announced the total, his hands fumbled through empty pockets. Coins clinked, nowhere near enough. Murmurs stirred behind them, impatience, judgment. Emily had $20 to last until Friday. But something about his shaking hands, the quiet pride in his stance broke her. She stepped forward, laid her bills on the counter, and whispered, "I've got this." The old man turned, surprise flashing in his eyes. "You don't have to," he rasped. Emily just nodded. As she grabbed her sack, the old man lingered by the door. When she stepped into the chilly evening, he was there. "Why'd you do it?" he asked. "Because you needed help." He studied her like a puzzle. Finally, he smiled. Crooked, weary, but genuine. Not many would. They walked together. He introduced himself as William Bear Maddox. "Folks used to call me Bear." He asked about her life, her classes, the job that left her smelling of grease and coffee. He listened, really listened. When they reached her tiny apartment, Bear paused. "What you did tonight, you'll never know how much that means." The next week dragged. Then one night, headlights swept across her parking lot. Motorcycles, at least 6. Boots echoed in the stairwell. Then a knock. Bear stood there, flanked by leather-clad men with patches on their backs, red and white skulls. Hell's Angels. Bear lifted a hand, calming. "Relax. They're with me." "Why are you here?" Emily whispered. "Because you helped me when no one else did. And it's time you knew who I am." They sat crowded in her apartment. "I wasn't just some old man short on change. I built something once, something that scared the world." He slid the patch toward her. "Hell's Angels. I was there at the beginning. Back when it was about brotherhood, not headlines. I gave men, without family, a family." Emily blinked, stunned. "You're saying you started it?" Bear nodded. The others bowed their heads with respect. Days turned into weeks. Bear began visiting often, bringing groceries, sometimes just conversation. He spoke of the past in fragments, roaring highways, bonds sealed in scars, the loneliness of power. One afternoon, Bear confessed something quietly. "I'm dying, Emily. Cancer. The doctors give me months." Emily's kindness hadn't just bought groceries. It had bought her a final chapter in a dying man's story. Bear showed her a weathered box filled with patches, photographs, and letters. "Promise me something. Don't let the world remember us only by violence. Remember the brotherhood, the code, the loyalty." Emily nodded, her throat too tight for words. Bear's health began to fail. Yet Emily never left him alone. She drove him to appointments, brought soup, sat with him through nights of coughing. The bikers, his brothers, noticed. They began treating her differently. One called her little sis. Another slipped gas money into her pocket. One evening, Bear asked Emily to ride with him. They rode into the desert, wind whipping. The sunset bled across the horizon. "That's freedom," he said softly. "That's what we chased. Not crime, not chaos, just freedom." The town began to whisper louder. Her manager warned her. But Emily stood firm. "They'll judge you for being near me," Bear said. Emily met his gaze. "Let them. I know who you are." Winter crept in. Bear's body weakened. One evening, he collapsed, coughing blood. Emily rushed him to the hospital. Hours later, he opened his eyes. "You scared me." He chuckled weakly. "First time I ever had an angel worried for me." "You gave me something no doctor could," he whispered. "What's that?" "Peace." The final days came faster than Emily imagined. On his last evening, the house filled with the low rumble of bikes. Dozens of riders arrived. Bear smiled faintly. "My brothers came." He turned to her, eyes soft with gratitude. "Kindness saved me, Emily. Yours." Then William Bear Maddox slipped away, surrounded by thunder and love. The funeral was unlike anything the town had ever seen. Hundreds of motorcycles lined the streets. Emily walked beside Bear's casket. At the cemetery, she laid the grocery receipt from that first night. "It was never just groceries," she whispered. "It was you." After the funeral, one of Bear's brothers handed Emily a sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Emily, I don't know why you stepped up that night, but it gave me hope. You showed me the world still has goodness, even for men like me. You are my family now. Love, Bear." At the bottom was his original patch. Emily pressed it to her chest, sobbing. Months later, Emily stood in her college auditorium addressing students. She told them about Bear, not his crimes, but the man who built family out of nothing. The world will tell you some people don't deserve grace, she said. But sometimes the hardest hearts carry the deepest wounds, and one small act can change everything. Years passed. Emily became a teacher. On quiet evenings, she would hear motorcycles echo through the streets. One summer night, a convoy rolled past. One biker slowed, glancing at her. On his vest was Bear's patch, preserved and passed on. He raised 2 fingers in salute before roaring away. Family never dies. Emily often thought back to that grocery store line, the trembling hand of a man who seemed forgotten. William Bear Maddox hadn't needed money. He needed to believe humanity still existed. And Emily Carter had given it to him with 20 crumpled dollars. Sometimes the smallest kindness sparks the greatest legacy.